Right. Hello, everyone. This is Danelli here, going to talk a little bit about writing, my favorite subjects in the entire world, and what I have um, gotten 2 degrees in and uh, spent quite a lot of time teaching students as an instructor, tutor, substitute teacher, um, you name it. Writing is one of the things that I'm very, very passionate about. And um, I need to pause this video for a second. I am going to start off with the question, what do you have to do to be a better writer? And once again, I don't know why, but the formatting on Canva has failed me. And some of the slides might not be as clear as I originally intended them to be, but it's okay. We'll pull through. What do you have to do to be a better writer? So I love to say that writing, storytelling, communication is a two-way street. So, um, really, in order to be able to write better, you have to read. You have to read a lot. So you have to write a lot and you have to read a lot. Um, and I'm not the only one that says this. There are a lot of other professional writers, fiction, nonfiction writers that will admit to this, right? For example, Stephen King says in his book on writing, which is one of my favorite ones, and I cite it all the time to students, and it's one of my like Bibles of writing. If you want to be a better writer, or if you want to write, you just have to follow two things above all others: read a lot and write a lot. And I think he is 100% spot on this and correct. You have to write a lot, you have to read a lot. I am going to actually take it a step further and say that you should be doing the two things every single day. This is the reason why that a lot of K through 12, like a lot of elementary schools in particular, focus on making sure children read 30 minutes a day minimum. If they read more, that's excellent, but at minimum, 30 minutes a day. I want to say this actually really just helps everyone. It is something that some of the most successful people do every single day. And I'm not talking about reading emails for work or like reports. I'm talking about fiction, nonfiction, things that are feeding the mind for like professional purposes that are distracting them from their day-to-day activities that help them relax. Genres that they are passionate about is what I'm talking about. So, write every day, read every day, practice, practice, practice. Practice makes perfect, or at least helps you master something in the long run. It'll take time to develop your own style of writing and reading, your own flow and rhythm. Um, so many people stress out about grammar. Please don't. Yes, grammar is super important. It is part of writing, and it is critical to make sure that whatever you're writing is helping your writing be clearer to readers, and that is the primary reason. But I discourage people from becoming obsessed with grammar and trying to memorize every rule right from the very beginning. First of all, when students try to do that, it really puts them off from learning how to write better in the long run, and they find it really stressful having to memorize all these rules, and they really do build on each other as well. So it can get really confusing if you start learning or trying to learn grammar at the wrong, with the wrong structure. So, yeah, I would recommend maybe just pick one or two grammar rules at a time and go from there. Like practice them consistently until you've just memorized how to use it correctly and how to do it right correctly every single time. Um, so yeah, don't practice more than one or two rules at a time because it might get overwhelming for you. And um, yeah, so the main purpose of grammar is always just one, to give your like language a solid structure, especially when you're writing, so that readers can understand it and um, they can separate one idea from the next. And also, number two, to make your ideas clearer to listeners and readers. Um, Memorizing all the grammar rules is not required. It may help you in the long run become a better technical writer. Also, it helps with like proofreading and copywriting if you want to ever kind of wander into those fields in your career or in your particular area of like discipline or work. Um, so let's see. Why is the subject of writing so important today? Um, the biggest reason why I kind of like started talking more about writing was because I really encounter a lot of people returning to education late in life that wanted to um, learn how to do simple things better, such as like writing an email in a more formal or professional way. And they were really getting frustrated because some of the, things they needed to learn were, again, very simple grammar rules, but also just how to put a sentence together. Um, and there's a crisis right now that is re-emerging that is very similar um, to what I'm describing. This idea that like there's no passion for writing or reading. So learners kind of get discouraged. They don't really want to venture into the discipline and they think it's not worth learning. They don't enjoy it. They find the structure and the requirements of like read every day and write essays very, just like oppressive. So the crisis in education with literature and reading and writing and the humanities in general is very real. And it really has to do with a lot of like trauma attached to learning and trauma attached to how like structured education is. So there's no real passion being fostered in a lot of students. And, whenever I've had the opportunity to talk to older students that are returning back to school, um, one of the things that they convey is that they also had when they were younger, that was one of the big reasons why they stopped going to school at a very young age. And this sort of crisis is like growing and replicating itself. And I talk a lot about why the um, ideology that like education doesn't matter is incredibly dangerous right now. I'm not going to go too into that, but that also adds sort of to this sort of education crisis because people buy into it and they don't realize that there is a way of learning that is unique to each individual. And once you tap into that unique learning ability, you can learn to grow. You can grow to love uh, any discipline so long as you know your learning style and you can start to learn that discipline in a way that you enjoy. Um, and so, aside from this education crisis, the other thing that's like happening right now is pretty much tied to technology and technological advancements. A lot of like sort of like software and technology has evolved over the years that kind of like operates on code and it does things for us in an automated fashion, like spell check and grammar check. And a lot of these AI software, like ChatGPT, developments are creating or adding to this sort of education crisis. Um, but something that I try to warn my students about with this sort of like AI revolution that's happening is that these softwares are not 100% reliable. Human touch, human like ability to spot nuance still incredibly needed. It's still it makes the difference between a competent piece of writing that is generated by an AI software and something that is like unique, personalized, and in the voice of the writer. Um, so this AI like developments, these AI developments are creating a crisis, or they're adding to an existing crisis in education. And I think that's something to be wary about in the future with writing. Another thing that I warn my students about in regards to like the technological advancements are that if you really pay attention, a lot of the times the like auto-populate can actually mess up something that was originally okay, and it'll auto-populate things that are incorrect, things that you did not mean to say, or um, like it'll distort the actual meaning of what you wanted to originally write or say. So again, learning how to become a better writer is important because editing your own writing is part of writing. And editing is critical even with these sort of auto-populate codes within like um, software, word processing word processing software that they're just not, I mean, they're good, but they're just not um, like something that we can 100% rely on. And a lot of people at this point are like, well, what's the trick then? Like, how do we become better writers? How is writing, um, you know, like how do we get through or over writer's block if that's some kind of issue that we have, or like how do we even know what to write about? And I think, in regards to writer's block, the biggest mistake that we make is assuming that we can just like everyone can just write at will. Um, I recently like did a video about 3 ways to start writing, like literally how to start um like in the moment when you don't know how to begin. I give 3 tips on how to do that. So if you're interested, go ahead and check that video out. Um, but no, you have to be really full of intent to begin writing. You need to choose to begin writing. And think of it like a workout. At first, you need to warm up and you do your workout, but it's not always the same every day. You can try a mix of different things. And I'm just going to touch on like a few of the like methods that I kind of try to use in order to start writing. Um, we go through different moods. We go through like different phases every day. Not every day is the same. So um, there's 3 practical ways of starting. You can you go the traditional route, pick up a pen or a pencil and a piece of paper or a notebook and physically just start to write. Um, I think this one has the most psychological benefits because it helps with like mental health, and it's a form of like expressive arts therapy that really, really works. And it's frequently encouraged for those reasons. It is journaling has been known to have a lot of like mental health benefits. So pen to paper is, critical. It's key. Um, Sometimes, voice notes, if you don't have any time to sit and physically write yourself, you can like use your a phone or any kind of technology that will help you draft something. So voice to text apps really, really help. And it's a fantastic way to like, it's a fantastic alternative to AI writing software, which can get students, for example, into some trouble if they cross the boundaries into plagiarism, right? Um, Also, the last one is typing. People just can just like try to start typing free writing where there's no like prompt, there's no question they're answering. They just sit and they empty their thoughts into the page. They can do that um, through word association. So pick a word or pick a thing and start a sentence or a question with that, and then just follow the train of thought. Um, so free writing, stream of consciousness is a great way to start writing and a great way to get through writer's block because often than not, people also think, you know, um, free writing and journaling, like what's the point of that if I have an essay that I have to do, or um, if I have a personal statement that I have to do. I want to encourage people to not necessarily look at it that way and think about it that way because believe it or not, through a word association, more often than not, students do end up writing something down that is going to be helpful for future writing assignments, ideas, inspiration. And writing it down right from the beginning really helps because you can also go back and add and change and edit those very ideas that you caught on paper the very first time around. A lot of times people forget if they had one brilliant idea and they forgot it like 3 days later, but they say, oh, I had this one idea and I wrote it down. They can go back and look what the idea was. And it can lead to a really helpful train of thought that informs their writing. Um, so and I've had students tell me like, yeah, but how do I write when my mind is so chaotic all the time? My anxiety doesn't let me think clearly, let alone write out a story or an outline. Um, I've had so many students like feel this general sense of like panic or anxiety around writing, and it's a mental health um, issue, and it also has very real physical symptoms to go along with it. People start to sweat, um, they cannot sit still, they start getting, physically sick or anxious or lightheaded. And I think, again, going back to the traditional route for that always helps. Get yourself a notebook and a pen and keep it with you at all times. Put it in your leave it in your car, put it on your desk, carry it with you in your handbag, and take it with you everywhere. Because the physical act of writing something with a pen and a paper is very healing, and it will actually like root you physically and calm you down. The great thing about like writing, using journaling to write is that generally it's private. You can go ahead and just empty your thoughts and they stay there, and it's a space to purge your thoughts. I would recommend though, when you do, and if you do go back and read your journaling and your writing, don't ever compare yourself to anyone else. Even if you're not journaling, even if you're just writing an essay or a personal statement, do not compare your journey to anyone else's because it'll hit your self-esteem, and there's no benefit to comparing yourself. Um, it's just gonna like hold you back. I do recommend finding someone that can give you reliable feedback and that gives you feedback in a way that you find acceptable and helpful, and does and makes you feel good and makes you feel like you're progressing. Um, so, that's something really important to keep in mind. If you are like going to journal and go back to read your material, um, my recommendation is only do that when you are 100% ready. So if you're not in a good place, you still have a lot of feelings that rise up whenever you kind of think about whatever you journaled on the event, the occurrence, the whatever you heard, whatever thoughts you had that you put down in writing. Um, Put it in the paper, but give yourself plenty of time to like emotionally process those events first. And then only when you're calm and accepting that what you read might not be perfect and might actually get you to think differently about those events or, you know, those things um, that it might be challenging, I think that's the right time to go back and actually read. Read your journal, read your material, and maybe potentially use it in the future for other creative projects or essays. Um, so like this method, pen to paper works great for people that have general anxiety, that like whose thoughts are constantly fragmented, scattered, incoherent. Sometimes, like open the page, be willing to just open the page. And even if you just start doodling or scribbling your name on the sheet endlessly for a while, just do that. I think getting into the habit of like entering that space will eventually lead to some progress. Um, And on the note of progress, so progress is often invisible. That's my last note on this PowerPoint. Progress is often invisible. People get super frustrated when they do something repeatedly over and over again, trying to practice getting better, and they don't see any progress. It's the same phenomenon happens when you're working out and you don't see progress right away, or when you're trying to build endurance and it feels like it's not working, or pretty much trying to learn and get better at a sport. The same applies for these sort of like academic goals or writing, for example. Progress is going to be invisible for a really long time. If you're writing and journaling for anxiety, you're writing and journaling for mental health reasons, it's going to feel like, there's no progress, but you have to give it time. You have to give yourself time and do it repeatedly. And um, I trust me, it works. I have tried it for years. I never recommend, I try to avoid recommending something that I haven't used myself as a student, as an individual. And if I'm recommending it, it's usually because I've tried it and it does actually work. And I've encouraged students to try it and it has more often than not worked for them as well. Um, so the last thing that I will say about that though is that if you want a like someone to help you gauge how much progress you've done, I would recommend getting yourself a tutor, going to the writing center if you're at a college or university, go talk to a tutor, but don't rely on one tutor's opinion or one like professor's opinion. Find somebody that you basically vibe with, that you have a authentic good connection with, that you resonate with. Find a coach or a mentor that can give you honest feedback that um, is basically suitable to what your goals are. And that use that person to give you feedback and advice on progress. Um, and the reason why I say consult multiple people is because a lot of students get really discouraged when they hear one bad thing or one negative thing from an instructor or a tutor that just doesn't vibe with them, that doesn't understand where they're coming from, what their journey has been. And that is what puts off a lot of people from education, from learning how to write, from learning how to journal, heck, from even going to therapy, right? Like consult multiple professionals all every single time, you know. I even recommend this to anybody that asks me for advice in relation to anything legal. I have a paralegal certificate from UCLA. I'm not legally allowed to give anyone legal advice, and I always have to start with that disclaimer. But I do tell them, you're welcome to consult multiple attorneys. And just because one attorney says no, it doesn't mean that another attorney can't handle your case or doesn't see value in your case. Um, if you consult multiple attorneys, there's a chance that maybe one of them will take on your case and say yes. Um, so that is like a standard recommendation regarding getting feedback, right? With writing, with journaling, and definitely for other things. Um, that is pretty much it for this video on writing. I hope that it was a little bit helpful for you. In the future, I'd like to add more on this sort of educational crisis and why writing is mastering your writing, getting better at your writing is going to become an underrated but very, very crucial skill in the next decade, if not for the foreseeable future, um, because of all of this technological advancement. I think that um, these sort of like humanities skills that help us connect and help us tell stories better are going to become more and more important. Right now, with this educational crisis, we are experiencing, like a moment where a lot of individuals seem to be putting down these sort of humanities skills, but these skills are critical, incredibly, incredibly critical, and they are the foundation for a lot of other skills that need to be acquired in order to be successful in your particular careers in a lot of fields, actually. So that's it on writing. I hope that this video was a bit helpful, and I appreciate your comments, questions, concerns. So make sure to leave those on the comment section of this video. Make sure to like, follow, and subscribe, share with your friends. Um, and I will see you next time.